CBS News Chief Congressional Correspondent Nancy Cordes joins me now from Capitol Hill. Nancy, how quickly do you think we could see a vote on this deal and get it to the president?
Well, we heard from Democratic leaders in the House today, Rena, that the earliest that they'll take a vote is tomorrow evening. And that's because they're hoping to be able to put the finishing touches on this bill today, file it this afternoon. But they can't hold votes during the day tomorrow because of funerals for two of their former colleagues, John Dingell of Michigan, Walter Jones of North Carolina. And so we are really going to be going down to the wire here. One of the reasons for the delay in actually getting this legislation out so that lawmakers and the president can take a look at it is that there are some disputes between the authors about a couple of key issues. One of them appears to have now been settled. Democrats wanted to include the Violence Against Women Act, a reauthorization of it in this bill because it too is set to expire very soon. Republicans have said yes to that, but there is also a discussion going on about back pay for federal contractors. Recall, Rena, that federal workers who were either furloughed during the shutdown or had to work without pay, they got all of their back pay. That was already settled by Congress. But if you're a federal contractor, someone who works full time for the federal government, but you're actually technically employed by a private entity, you got no pay for those 5 weeks. And so Democrats are pushing to include a provision in this border security package that would authorize back pay for all of those federal contractors. Republicans say that it's still under discussion, but they're going to have to conclude that discussion fairly quickly if, as you put it, they want to avert this partial government shutdown on Friday night.
And Nancy, let's say the president signs this bill and funds it and moves forward, and then he makes good on his threats of declaring a national emergency. What kind of spot does that put congressional Republicans in?
You know, they are fairly clear and on the record that they don't think that that is the way to go. Some of them believe that he's well within his rights to declare a national emergency if he feels that there is one. But many other Republicans really don't like the idea. They think it sets a bad precedent. They're not really sure there is a national emergency. But I'll tell you, Rena, Republicans are much more concerned right now about the possibility of a partial government shutdown, a second one, than they are about the specter of him declaring a national emergency. So they're not talking about that all that much right now. Their attitude seems to be that they'll cross that bridge when they come to it. Right now, they want to keep him happy. They want to get his support on this deal. So they don't see a lot of value in speaking out against something that he might do down the road.
I can see why their focus would be on this shutdown. So Congress is offering $1.375 billion for fencing on the southern border, not a wall. So functionally here, what's really the difference between a border fence and a border wall?
You know, it's really in the eye of the beholder, Rena. People here on Capitol Hill are so confused about what kind of barrier this actually is, how it's different from what we've seen in the past, how it differs from the wall that the president is calling for. It's really a tomato-tomato situation at this point. If you know, it's made of steel. One of the key Republican negotiators said that concrete would be involved. So, you know, if that gives the president, you know, more leverage to be able to say this really is a wall, then great. Democrats and Republicans, for the most part, say a barrier is a barrier. If this is going to, you know, keep people out along the southern border, so be it. You can call it whatever you want.
So, Nancy, meanwhile, we got Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell is saying that he'll plan a vote on this, what they call radical plan to fight climate change. It's known as the Green Deal. I want to play a bite for you.
I've noted with great interest the Green New Deal, and we're going to be voting on that in the Senate. We'll give everybody an opportunity to go on record and see how they feel about the Green New Deal.
Isn't this great for Green New Deal supporters? You get a vote, but then you've got the resolution's Senate sponsor, Democrat Ed Markey, who issued a statement really pushing this forward. So I'm curious again, Nancy, I know I asked you about this yesterday. What is behind the politics of this?
This is the Senate's Republican leader wanting to put Democrats on the record on what he feels will be a difficult issue for them, because many Republicans and frankly some Democrats feel that this Green New Deal, which really isn't a piece of legislation that is enactable, it's more a set of goals, climate goals. Republicans and some Democrats feel that it's fairly unrealistic, calls for things like reducing emissions to zero within 10 years, retrofitting every building in America. And so Republicans think it's not ready for prime time, and they think that it's a potentially embarrassing vote for Democrats to have to take, particularly Democrats who are on the ballot for president in 2020. The reason that Ed Markey, who is, as you pointed out, one of the authors of this particular proposal, is angry is because he says, look, this is a set of goals. We haven't held any hearings on it yet. We haven't worked it into final legislative language, and so clearly Republicans are just trying to make a point here. Well, what's their position on climate change? What are they going to do about global warming? So that's the sort of the positioning you see from Republicans and Democrats right now, and obviously we'll have a chance to see how all of the Democrats in the Senate come down on this when this vote is held. We don't know exactly when that'll take place yet.
So, Nancy, if Congress really isn't serious about taking up the Green New Deal at this point, is there anything else in either of the chambers at this point to try and combat the effects of climate change?
Well, one of the big goals for House Democrats once they took control of the House last month was to establish a select committee on climate change. This is really their key area where they're actually creating an entirely new committee, even though several committees that currently exist have jurisdiction over this area. They are sort of setting out how important this is to them by creating an entire committee with members and a chair, because they believe that this issue is important and they want to do evidence-based hearings so that they can work on coming up with specific pieces of legislation that they believe would be helpful. It's why you heard the House Speaker, Nancy Pelosi, when she was asked about the Green New Deal last week, she said, well, I don't know that much about it, but I like the enthusiasm behind it, and this is an issue that is going to be very important to us. As far as the 2020 candidates are concerned, it kind of depends on where they're from. Someone like Kamala Harris, who is from California, may not see much drawback to getting up as she has and saying, yeah, I support the Green New Deal. It is a set of aspirations. We need to think big. I'm behind it. Someone like Sherrod Brown of Ohio, who has not declared, but who has been mulling over the possibility of a bid. He's from Ohio, where a plan that says things like eliminating all emissions, or made a joke about getting rid of cows, that's maybe a piece of legislation he doesn't want to put his stamp of approval on. So it really is a case-by-case basis right now.
Nancy Cordes, Chief Congressional Correspondent. Thank you so much, Nancy.
You're welcome.